The Jazz are selecting 10th. Let's meet some of the likely candidates to be selected by the Utah Jazz. Find out next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin, live from Chicago at a hotel right after attending the Combine all day long. I'm excited and honored to be filling in for David Locke on Locked On Jazz during an awesome time of the year. It's a big week in the draft community, and I'm excited to take you guys through it and tell you who the Jazz can get. You guys know me by now, but I'm a credentialed NBA draft analyst, attendee of the 2023 and now 2024 NBA Draft Combine, Utah Jazz broadcast assistant and statistician, lover of college basketball. So I'm qualified to give you guys some insight on these players that the Jazz may be picking up at number 10, 29, and 32. But we're going to be talking about 10 today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Jazz your first listen each and every day. And remember to download Locked On Jazz, and it's free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow is comment anything below. And today's question is, who would you want the Jazz to draft, and does the Combine and the results change anything? And I'll break down some of those results for you. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, so place parlays, spread bets, and more, and win big. All right, in the first segment, I'll discuss what I think happens at the top of the draft and tell you who's available and based on my estimations at the 10th pick. In the second segment, I'll go through the games of the two prospects, meaning what they're good at, what they're bad at, of the two prospects that I think will be linked to the Jazz, who I do to be my early favorites due to their upside with very different roles in Holland and Cody Williams. And in the final segment, I'll analyze the game of Dalton Knecht and give a pitch why to take the 23-year-old when it's often looked down upon, even by me in times past, because this year is different than most years. All right, let's dive right in. I believe the Jazz will not be trading. I believe the Jazz will be drafting a player with that is a wing, barring a trade into moving into a top range and going for a guy like Topic or Dillingham. And I think what it breaks down to is probably what wings are selected in the picks 5 through 9. And yes, those picks matter when it's like, okay, those are the picks in front. But let me break down why that's more important. I think the Jazz are looking at the kind of the fifth wing of the NBA draft is who they're going to get at 10. I think there's going to be 4 wings selected in front of 10, and the Jazz will likely take a wing at number 10. So they'll be getting the fifth wing in this draft. So let me break down the way I think this goes. This year, the Jazz, I don't think will look to contend, and this draft is considered to be devoid of stars. So the Jazz may be more willing to draft best fit more so than years past or most years, and try to find a complementary piece next to Lowry, and then next year, presumably, assuming the Jazz stay in the top 8, try to find the best player available and hopefully the star. But that theory will be applied by many teams ahead of the Jazz who won't want to miss, and they won't want to, quote unquote, miss. And I'm doing air quotes for those of you watching on YouTube. And there appear to be no stars, so maybe you don't take the boom or bust guy, and that may leave the boomer bust guy for the Jazz. And in years past, my philosophy would be take the guy with potential. And so that could happen for the Jazz. The wings in the group I have largely focused my episodes on are some of the same ones we'll talk about today, because I think that's the position the Jazz most likely go for. There are 2 reasons for that. Danny Ainge often drafts sizable players for their position, and this quintet of wings has that in spades. They may have deficiencies in the rest of their game, but size is not one of them. The Jazz could go best player available at wing and likely should take a wing for best fit too. So that's why I've been prioritizing the wings. So I'll talk about the guards in future ones, but wings is this episode. And if there's a third reason, it's that the group of wings are largely projected to be selected between 4 through 10, which is where the Jazz are, even if it's at the bottom of that range. So by my estimations, there will be 1 or 2 bigs and 2 guards in the top 4, which pushes the wings down towards the Jazz. I believe Sarr, Klingon, Dillingham are all top 4 picks. And then I would guess Nikola Topic is the 4th, though he just got injured. And this is recorded live after the Combine, and he wasn't there, but he was playing elsewhere and got injured. But I believe that he'll be the 4th pick, which then leaves a group of every wing available. And if a wing goes top 4, my guess is that it would be Zachary Risache. He seems to have the most hype by a lot of camps, including ESPN, that seem to have him pigeonholed in the top 3. So let's assume that top 5, that is what happens in some variation. That leaves Castle, Buzelis, Williams, Holland, Knecht, and Shepard, and then throw in wild cards of Tijon Salaun, or maybe Isaiah Collier, maybe Jacoby Walter. And I think the herd gets thin to that group by Castle and Shepard are cut from the mix. Both are younger, productive players with different skill sets, but both will be coveted for different reasons. And I think gone before the Jazz's pick at 10. But then I think Buzelis is probably the next most likely guy to be gone, meaning pick 9, owned by the Grizzlies, who covet a big, and likely Klingon and Saar are gone. That would leave, based on my estimations, Holland, Williams, Knecht, Collier, Salaun, and Walter. The Grizzlies have the pieces to compete with John Morant, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane. And, they've got some other players coming back that are healthy, and they were the 2 seed in years past, in recent years past, I should say. So if the draft were to fall as I've predicted, which that would not shock me whatsoever, they would most likely select Knecht based on what I'm hearing there and my thoughts, because that's an established player and they think they're ready to compete. So that leaves the Jazz with a chance to take a guy with high upside. And I think the Jazz would really love their chance to select a few players like youngsters in G League Ignite, Ron Holland, whom I had ranked 3rd in my first big board and may still keep there as I adjust it this week in the Combine. And then that also would leave Colorado's Cody Williams, who I have entering the Combine ranked 5th. Coming up, I think there's a really real chance that's the way the board falls. And if it changes, I think there'll be teams clamoring to get a wing in those top 4, but I don't know if the fit works. Let me take you through this. I think the Hawks likely go with Saar. I think at number 2, it's likely going to be Klingon, or if they decide, you know what, we're not going to have Poole be our franchise guy, maybe it's Topic, maybe it's Dillingham. And a lot of people say Reece Sachet is in that conversation. I personally don't think that's very likely. And you go to 3, I think it becomes likely that it's Klingon at 3. I don't think the Rockets are like that set with their big guy being a defensive liability. He's an amazing offensive player, but I wonder if Klingon is the answer there. But I don't think Klingon falls out of the top 4, despite poor testing at the Combine athletically. He had one of the lowest verticals, and he tested slowly. But it doesn't matter too much, because what he does well on a basketball court is far more important than agility and verticality drills. He shot the ball pretty well, for those of you who are concerned about that. Then that would leave Dillingham or Topic and Reece Sachet. And I think the wings is just preference between teams there. I think Castle shot the ball well. He hit 18 to 25 threes, and that makes it harder for him to slip to the Jazz. And I know many of you guys really love him. I don't think he falls. Reed Shepherd had a 42-inch vertical max, which was tied for the best with Devin Carter and a few others. Trenton Flowers. I don't think he'll be there, even though I've ranked him lower on my board. I think he's gone. So you play the field, and I think you really end up with a group of Knecht, maybe Buzelis, likely Holland, maybe Williams. Buzelis could fall because he shot pretty poorly, kind of shoots a knuckleball. Cody Williams didn't have a very good shooting display. Ron Holland had a 38-inch vertical and tested with really great agility. And then that leaves Dalton Knecht, Isaiah Collier, Tijon Salaun as kind of wild cards for that pick. So I kind of think that it's going to boil down to Cody Williams, Ron Holland, and Dalton Knecht. But coming up next, let's do a deep dive on both of those first two, Cody Williams and Ron Holland. But first, let me take you through a word of FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a big shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, and player props, and more. Visit FanDuel/LockedOn and make every playoff shot count. I also want to tell you, and that's FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make sure to go download it. It's awesome. I also want to tell you guys about Murdoch Hyundai. Murdoch's been in Utah for over 80 years. Murdoch is the best car for your money with safety features, bells, whistles, all in amazing cars for amazing prices. I've been privileged to drive the Tucson many times, and I love it. And I drove it all the time. I don't have my keys right now, but I often, as you guys know, like to jingle them and show all the amazing features that it has. Like you try to turn left and there's someone in your blind spot. It alerts you and loud and clear. It also alerts others and yourself when you're backing up. If there's any obstacles, it rings for all to hear, and it's very safe in that regard. They also have different cars than the Tucson. They got the Kona, the Santa Fe, the Palisade. Like I said, I love the Tucson. I imagine those are amazing as well. Then they also have the Ioniq 5, which was electric and named the Motor Trend SUV of the Year by Motor Trend. And then the new Ioniq 6 is even better. It's an electric car, looks like a Porsche, and just won the World Car of the Year. There are 3 locations in Utah, so make sure to go into them. They're in Linden, Murray, and Logan. And I can personally tell you how awesome the people in Murray are. As one time I went in there and they're like, "Oh, you're Leif from Locked On Jazz." And I was like appalled. He knew who I was. This was this summer. And I was like, man, that's awesome. I'll make sure to shout you out. So there you go. There's your shout out. Make sure to go check out Murdoch Hyundai and get yourself one of the newest and best cars on the market. Welcome back. I'm Leif Thulin from Locked On Jazz, live from Chicago. And I also want to ask you guys a question. Are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, well, welcome back to Locked On Jazz, and I mentioned it's possible and maybe likely as it stands now that the Jazz could be looking at Ron Holland or Cody Williams at 10, and both have amazing attributes, but enough to make them feasible, or enough flaws to make them feasible to be selected at 10. Here's a rundown that I wrote about Cody a few days ago, and for everydayers, this may sound familiar. I wrote this talking about his floor versus ceiling. So if you guys listen to that episode, this is similar. Cody Williams, I wish very badly to be a point guard, but I see more as a 6'8" combo guard who is not the athlete his older brother is, but he was hampered by injuries, including playing in the NCAA tournament, severely bothered by an ankle injury. Williams' shooting numbers appear to be good, but I would caution Jazz fans to the fact he was such a reluctant shooter that does not typically bode well if the percentage is quite good, but the volume is low. So his shooting is definitely not a red flag, but I do think it is a question, and a fair question to ask. The next question will be about roll. How often would he have the ball in his hands to create as he drove downhill and ISO a lot for Colorado as a freshman, which bodes well, playing with a lot of all-conference vets and KJ Simpson, Tristan De Silva, both of whom are also at this combine. And if he's off the ball, how much of his best assets are in play? I think his fit would be as a complementary ball handler who can use his size to defend and size to draw defenders and create for Lowry, Markkanen, Taylor Hendricks on the perimeter, as their sizable defenders would likely be drawn in with Williams's ability to penetrate and ability to see over the defense being impressive. I really like Cody Williams because he's young. He has not yet learned to play physically, but as an antidote that he's learned to play with guile. And I think sometimes if you learn the tricky side and then you get stronger, you can really play. I think if he gets stronger, he's a real shot of helping the Jazz in many ways. So I wrote that a while ago. Here's some strengths and weaknesses. He didn't shoot the ball very well, by the way. For those of you guys wondering, you're like, oh, you're at the combine, so what's the news? Well, he's tall. Like he looks the part. He's long. He's lanky. He reaches up pretty high. He had a 36-inch vertical as his max vertical. He jumped off 1 foot for that. So sometimes that's more functional. You take your pick. Like Dalton Knecht, also a 1 foot jumper. Some of the higher guys, Reed Shepard went off 1 foot as well, and he had a 42-inch vertical, as I alluded to at the beginning of this. So here are Cody Williams' strengths and weaknesses. He's a fluid ball handler with the ability to get to the basket using either hand to finish with touch from challenging angles. He often takes kind of long strides and changes directions, and he's capable of making a lot of advanced passes from a young age. He's a freshman. He's really able to swing the ball around and find other players, and that's something I'm pretty impressed with. His best role might be as a point forward if his jumper is slow to develop due to his ability to run pick and roll. And he makes really good, quick decisions and tends to make the right read in making those quick decisions. But through the early part of the season for Colorado, his shot was falling, but it started to be a little less efficient. How much of that was injury related? But like I said, I wasn't that impressed with the shot. I thought it had a little bit of a lack of backspin. Most good shooters have like 3 or 4 rotations before the ball finds its way through the rim. His is about 1.5, and that concerns me a little bit. Matas Buzelis is similar, but that shoots kind of what I would call a knuckleball. His weaknesses include he's not a above the rim leaper, unlike his brother. His brother's twitchier and more explosive. Jalen Williams is longer and kind of more guile oriented, a little more focused on needing finesse. Like he can't explode in the same way his brother can, which can lead to issues at the basket against some elite competition that happened to him against some opponents and playing for Team USA, and also against the best opponents he played at Colorado. Though he has touch, he has had challenges at the rim against those top-end athletes. He's an underwhelming three-point shooter in terms of the volume. He has good mechanics, but he just seems to lack the confidence to pull it and cement him as a top-end prospect, because if he shot 42% with volume, he'd probably go top 3 in this draft. I also think he needs to get stronger. That's the biggest thing. If he gets stronger, I think a lot of these issues are alleviated, and he can really make a case. And I think that's part of the reason the Jazz would really be happy to get him. Like I mentioned, he didn't shoot well at the combine today, and nor did this guy, Ron Holland. I'm going to break down what I wrote about him, and I also talked about him being one of the guys that I think is most likely to become an all-star. So that would be great if the Jazz could get him at 10. Holland is third on my current board based on my preferred philosophy of the top guys should have the most chance to reach stardom. But in this class where you're drafting pieces to help a team forward rather than the dude to build around, I may tinker with my board a little bit, but at 10, he would be a steal. And just on raw talent alone, Holland has a shot to be one of the best in this class because he's young, he has experience in bigger games, scored 20 per game in the G League. He's a dynamic athlete with a high motor, defensive ability, decent passing, and I would call it an impressive finishing, especially at that age playing against professionals. Holland does have glaring deficiencies, though, as a shooter, and statistically, I mentioned this in a previous one. David Locke talked about him, Stefan Castle, Matas Buzelis being kind of statistically not able to really thrive in the NBA based off their poor shooting. Like the analytically derived theory he came up with and he's been doing for about 6 years that talks about, the shooting prowess of these players kind of eliminated Holland's archetype from having success. But I can see the flip side of that is he's similar to RJ Barrett. And coming out, RJ Barrett had similar weaknesses, but people saw a star still because he found ways to score at most levels and forced his way to the rim, shot mid-range jump shots, and was an impact player at every level he played at Montverde, at Duke. And then in the NBA, he's been good. He's not been a star, but he's been quite good. The reason Holland's floor is lower than some wings in this class, and maybe his upside's higher, is because he's not as big as some of them are. He's about 6'6". He's not having the same defensive impact that you would have if he were a little bit bigger, even though he's got the wiring to be a lockdown defender. And I think he's got the motor to be really good, the relentlessness to be very good defensively. But if the shot doesn't come around and he's a 2 guard rather than a 3, maybe he's a little like Josh Okogie. And if he's not able to be a star or a good offensive player, he's very reliant on defense. And yeah, that's a dangerous player to put that much faith in. That said, I do have faith he can become an impactful offensive player. And if that's the type of guy you can get who can attack closeouts, who can knock down occasional threes. I thought he shot the best of the trio of Buzelis, Cody Williams, and Ron Holland. His ball has the best rotation. He shoots a little bit. And if you guys are watching YouTube, a little bit with his right hand in front of his face, and it kind of goes across his face a little bit. And there's a little bit of a hitch in there in the gather. His elbow goes across his body, whereas Buzelis shoots it high from his right side. And so does Cody Williams, but they just don't. Their rotation and their touch doesn't seem as good. Holland's numbers shooting were better than Buzelis's, despite Buzelis being regarded as the more skillful player. And I don't know, but there's some positives, there's some weaknesses. Here are his strengths and weaknesses on a kind of more note-friendly level rather than just kind of ranted at you. He's an explosive finisher of the basket. He can hang in the air and score through contact, gives him the upside to be a foul magnet. Somebody can get to the line, use his 70-plus free throw percentage. If he doesn't get all the way to the rim, he swings the ball pretty well. He's a decisive attacker. In transition, he's fantastic. He always sprints the floor, and he'll actively cut or drive closeouts and attack the rim, knowing that's what he's good at. He's a better shooter off the dribble than he is off the catch, and I don't know if that's a positive or negative, but just make of what you will. He flashes a flair as a passer, and just an overall selflessness that I'm impressed with. And he's on defense versatile. He's able to play physically against bigger players or switch onto quicker players and get his hands on the ball and block shots as well from the wings. He's also one of the youngest players in the class. I know that's not like a basketball thing, but the fact he played and scored nearly 20 points a game at 18 against pros matters to me. Now, here are some weaknesses. He's a stiff spot-up shooter. He takes a beat to get his feet set, and he tries to read the laces. He catches it. Most shooters know how to catch the ball and go right into it. Doesn't matter how they catch it. He's the type where he looks at the ball and has to adjust it in his hands, so he's a little bit slow on his setup, and he's a bit stiff on the release. He's not a great free throw shooter. He still needs to improve shooting as a standstill. He struggles to gain an edge when isolating. He's more of a straight line slasher than someone with a bit of wiggle to his game. And then he needs to work on improving his left hand as a passer and as a finisher. Make of that what you will. Let me know what you guys think about the comments differentiating between he and Cody Williams. But those two are legitimate candidates to go number 10 with solid upside, but shot badly at the combine. So there will be more to come on them throughout this process, because I think they're, after this, still legitimately in play for 10. I was like, there's a chance that one of those guys shoots the lights out and someone loves him and they give him a promise and the Jazz don't get to talk about him. Still could happen in team workouts, but so far in the combine, I would say they're very much in play still. There's negatives, there's positives. Holland had a 38-inch vert and tested very well in agility, but they both didn't shoot very well. All right, well, let's talk about next someone who measured very well athletically and can really shoot it. That's Dalton Knecht. But first, let me tell you about Prize Picks. In case you don't know, let me tell you what Prize Picks is. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll right in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn 10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey, college basketball entries on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Prize Picks also has something for every sports fan, from basketball and hockey to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick on Anthony Edwards, Caitlin Clark, Connor McDavid, or Jude Bellingham, all in the very same entry. I've played Prize Picks before. I've worked for the NBA, so I can't bet on the NBA, but I've dabbled with baseball. I've even tried tennis, which my favorite is trying to pinpoint pitchers who I think will exceed their strikeout totals, or find players in tennis who are big servers and try to guess that there will be more aces than the suggested total. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for the first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONNBA, and you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right. Dalton Knecht is an older player, so maybe he fits the parameters of being projectable and safe in a class that may be good. And that's in this class, it may really be good. And a lot of classes you could say, well, safe's good, but I think the Jazz fans are pretty eager to have someone change the trajectory of the franchise. I don't know if you're going to get it in this class, so maybe people would be a little tired of picking a 23-year-old. But the one thing I'll say to that is, while the Jazz could be conservative and take someone that you think is a safe projection, maybe they're not there because everyone ahead of the Jazz does exactly that. So now the nitty gritty about Dalton Knecht. Knecht to me is the most bankable shooter. What I mean by that is, I made a comment just today that I bet Knecht makes the most shots because he's such a workaholic and the nerves of shooting won't impact him. And his shot looked effortless today. And he was really, really good. I don't know if you were to calculate every single one who shot the best, but what I do know is he shot 20 of 25 from 3 in a 3-point catch and shoot drill. And he had a 39-inch vertical, displaying the athleticism that I've told you is everyone's going to say, oh, it's sneaky athleticism and he's gritty. Like, there's those stereotypes. But he is a good athlete. He has what Jimmy Dykes often referred to as pro lift. He displayed that athleticism with a 39-inch vertical. But what I was more impressed with is he performed very, very well and led all wings in the agility drills and all that recorded at the time of this recording at 2.79 seconds in the shuttle, and a second place pro lane drill while this is being recorded at well under 11 seconds. And most wings were around 11 seconds. So he really did it well in the athletic testings, and you knew he was going to shoot well. He's the total package, and he may not have a ton of upside to be the top guy on a team, but he will always be a guy to me that you have to guard. And if he's the pick, I will not complain whatsoever about the Jazz. I mentioned this in a previous episode, so every dares this may be redundant, but he's the type of guy that Taylor Hendricks was for me last year. Very different in like that Hendricks is raw, but he was the guy on my board that kind of was at the level of where the Jazz are picking. And if there were players ahead, I would have been bummed to have that happen. But the Jazz had a board with Hendricks at 9, and they went with him at 9 because the 8 ahead were taken. And Danny Ainge said that up front. I feel the same way about Dalton Knecht. I have him 10th. And if the board falls as I've kind of projected, I would probably take Williams or Holland, and because I believe in those upside swings, but I won't complain about taking Knecht at 10 because he's 10th on my board. Okay, here are some commonly stated strengths and weaknesses about Dalton Knecht. He's a knockdown 3-point shooter. We all know this. He can do it from deep range. He can sprint into a wing, readjust in midair. He comes off screens really, really well, and he did it more than just about anyone. Came off pin downs. He came off flares. He came through elevator screens and knows how to do the footwork and the elevation required for all of those type of shots. That's really important for the type of player he's going to be, where he's an offensive specialist with an ability to do more than just shoot. He's not a specialist like Kyle Korver in the sense that Korver just flies off screens and doesn't do much more. Knecht can put the ball on the floor. He can attack the rim. He can put the ball on the floor, elevate for a mid-range shot. He can post up a little bit and make good passes. That's just me talking. So back to the bullet points. He's a talented shooter off the dribble with multiple moves to create the space. That talks more about his agility and his ability to do stuff with the ball. Tennessee relied on him to score in all sort of situations, so I think he knows how to run pick and roll. I think he could run pick and roll as a supplementary ball handler. I think he knows how to pass when he's doubled or when he attacks and he has to make quick decisions, knows where to kick the ball out. He's very good at finishing with both hands, and he takes off really well off 1 foot, 39 inches off a max vert off 1 foot. And he's had many poster dunks. He's also very strong. His shoulders are huge, and not many shooters have those big arms, but he does that. And those that do are able to absorb contact at the rim when they attack closeouts. I think he's a pretty good passer, as I've alluded to. And then I would say his biggest weakness is he's targeted by opponents because he was the weakest defender on a college roster. That's typically bad, but I will give the Jazz fans some hope here if Knecht were to be the pick. Tennessee is an elite defense, top 3 in the country. So the wings that they have, the bigs that they have, excellent defenders, 2 of whom were top 3 in all SEC defensive voting. And then I would argue the actual best defender in Tennessee wasn't even picked in that, and that would be Jemai Meshack. I would argue that Zakai Ziegler, the point of attack guard, was probably the second best defender or even third best defender, and he won SEC Defensive Player of the Year. And Jonas Adu, their big, probably was their second best behind Jemai Meshack. I digress. I don't think it's as big of an issue for Knecht. I think he just took an unbearable burden to score the ball for an inept offensive team other than him, and he didn't have to focus that much on defense. But he went to Tennessee to learn defense. That was the whole reason he went there. He knew he could shoot. Back to the point, I think he's going to be often targeted in the NBA, often I look at these notes and it says, unless he improves his ability to move laterally. Well, he moved beautifully laterally at the combine. Okay, so my overview. This is what I wrote a few weeks ago talking about ceiling versus floor. Knecht is a solid player who knows his role and can thrive now or later. And like I said, I wrote this a few days ago, but nothing's changed. Knecht is 23 years old, so his appeal is the immediacy in which his shooting and scoring prowess could be impactful on an NBA court. Knecht, to me, figures to be an advanced skill set marksman who adds a scoring punch as the 4th or 5th starter, who has the athleticism to punish closeouts, the shooting chops and passing instincts to have an offensive sets made for him, and he's an offensive supplementary weapon, and he knows how to play well enough to be solid from the outset. Those of you saying he's kind of like Brandon Miller because he's the leading college hoops wing scorer, they're not. It's that don't have the expectations to be someone he can be a franchise guy or a potential all-star guy. Knecht, for better or worse, was a late bloomer and thrived as an older player in a high-level college team. They made the Elite Eight, and he scored 37. He's a big game player. But that said, he played at JUCO, then he went to Northern Colorado, and then he thrived. So don't expect that same meteoric rise that you expect immediately from a player like that. Just temper your expectations in that regard. But I do expect his role to be similar to that of a kind of a toned down version of what Bojan Bogdanovic did. And in that he for much of his early career, I think Bogey with the Jazz was a better player than what I expect ever to be for Knecht, but maybe an early version of Bogey in the sense that he was a knockdown shooter, someone who could compete defensively and try to be a body. He's got a bigger base, knocks down big threes, comes off curls and scores, can give you some post-up matchups, will score in a variety of ways, and will be a good player to have on your team, a complementary piece on a good basketball team. So that's kind of what I think the case is for Knecht. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys for listening to Locked On Jazz, and I'll be back later this week with more thoughts on the combine, including tomorrow, based on who played well in the scrimmages. Those are coming up tomorrow, so I'll record and have that out for you guys. And also tell you guys who are the candidates to be taken at the end of the first round and the second round, because a lot of them that I deemed to be candidates did drills today and are playing in the scrimmages. That's a great sign, because then the Jazz will be able to see, hey, how does this guy play with new teammates? How does he play and interact with guys? I think there's a lot that can be learned. Some guys that have thrived in recent years are like Jalen Williams. He went from being a later round pick, presumably, and then he went to number 12 because he dominated in this. Bones Highland was a late round pick who dominated in this drill. Ben Shepherd last year shot the cover off the ball, and now he's playing for the Pacers, who are tied 2-2 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. So thank you guys for listening to Locked On Jazz. I got one more question for you guys. Have you guys heard about this? Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you guys for listening. I'll be back with you with insights from the scrimmage and guys that I have pinpointed that I want the Jazz to select at 29 and 32. So tune in then. I'll be back with you. And as always, go Jazz.